What's up everyone, this is Alex and today we're finally gonna talk about orchestral mixing. And I know you guys have been waiting a lot for this type of tutorials, but I actually aimed at making tutorials about arranging first because I wanted to impress upon you the importance about arrangement, which is the foundation for any type of professional sounding orchestral music. If you want your music to sound amazing, you need to learn arrangement first. That's why I made videos about strings, brass, how to arrange for percussion, etc. before I even made videos about mixing. But now that I talked about that stuff a lot in the past, and I think maybe your arranging skills might have improved thanks to those videos, hopefully, I think it's time to start talking about mixing. So in the span of the next few weeks, I'm going to release tutorials about orchestral mixing. Each tutorial is going to be based on a single mixing unit. So for example, one tutorial on equalizers and spectrum, one on compression, one on stereo imagers and stuff like that, you know. But today I want to talk about the mixer, you know, how this thing here works, how to route it and organize it for the best, in my opinion, orchestral mixing workflow, which is going to save you time and it's going to make everything way more clear and easy when it comes to mixing very, you know, not complex, but very comprehensive orchestral music. So today I'm going to talk about the mixer, as I said, but there are some things that I'm going to say today that I already told and already explained in other tutorials. But yeah, today we're gonna go in depth on how this thing works, and this tutorial is especially aimed at people who have no idea how this thing works. If you already have the knowledge and understand how the mixer works, how, you know, routing and group buses and sends work, then maybe this video is not for you. You should skip it and wait for the next ones. But if you're oblivious to how the mixer works and how to organize it, stay tuned because I'm going to drop some knowledge on you right now. So we're gonna start by understanding what this is. So the mixer board here, or in DAWs in a digital setting, it's pretty much emulating what a physical mixer would look like. Sort of. It's not exactly the same, but pretty much. So let's say, for example, let's see how this works by taking, for example, the second violins in this part, which are nothing to they're not particular, but I just want to prove a point or show you how this works. So we have this part. So as you can see here, the second violins are being routed to this thing here, this track. As you see, like this single number slots here, each of these is a mixer track. So the violins are routed to the mixer track number 13. Let's see what happens when the signal goes in. So what happens is that pretty much the signal goes into this mixer track, then it gets processed by all the effects which are loaded into these slots, starting from the first, ending at the last one. Now we only have an EQ here, so the signal gets processed by the EQ, and if we were to manipulate this EQ, we will hear it in the strings. So the signal travels all through the last slot of the effects, then it gets here where first you can edit the panning here with this knob, and this pretty much determines where the signal gets placed in the stereo space. If I put it to the left, right. Okay, so that's the panning, and this is the volume slider, which pretty much kind of overrides the volume, like the signal of the volume that the volume has so far, and it increases it or decreases it accordingly to the value you assign to this slider. Then we have this in FL Studio. I'm not sure if other DAWs have it. This is the stereo separation knob, which pretty much makes your signal much more stereo or mono. This is what I mean by mono. Like with no stereo information to the left and to the right speakers. While with 100% stereo, it pretty much takes the mono signal, so the one you hear in between your speakers, and it pretty much deletes it, so you only hear the stereo signal. So 100% stereo makes it sound much more wide, and 100% mono makes it sound much more closed. And you should be careful with this, because like this is a very useful tool if you want to, for example, percussion have a lot of low frequencies that can create mud in the stereo field. So making them a little bit mono, like I don't know, 30% mono or so, kind of helps you preserve that, kind of helps you avoid that mud in the stereo space, while increasing it for, say, strings that are types of instrument that have mid and high frequencies is going to make the string sound much more broad. Now the problem is that if you put it to 100% stereo separated or 100% mono, it's going to sound funny and unnatural. And when you're writing orchestral music and when you're mixing or producing orchestral music in general, what you want to do is emulating the reality. You know, that's the human ear is really put off by orchestral music that doesn't sound natural, because we are just used to hearing it so naturally because it's orchestral music. So you want to avoid putting this 100% or 100% mono, 100% separated, because this can, like, if your mix is amazing, like we're only analyzing the second violins here, but you can do this on the master as well. And let's see what happens when we do that. So we have this part here. Let's take another part actually. So it doesn't sound right? This is just too wide and has no body. So you need to be careful with this because it can destroy your mix. And I never use this in the master. I just use it on separated instruments. But there are also other ways to manage the stereo space. We're going to talk about that in the stereo imager tutorial, which I'm going to make in the next few weeks. So for now, just know this is the stereo imager. And then after that, like the second violin gets processed by all these effects, the stereo and the panning knob and the slider, etc. After that, this usually gets sent, like by default, every single mixer track gets sent to one main mixer track called the master, which is usually the first one. Not in this project because yeah, this is already set up with my template, but don't matter, like don't count this output track. So this, like all the tracks generally get sent to the master, which tends to, like in every DAW, the master is the track which is linked to the output of the DAW. And the output of the DAW means that the signal that gets there pretty much gets processed and sent to your audio card, and which sends it to your speakers or your your headphones. So what goes in the master is what you hear, and every single mixer track goes to the master, generally speaking. Now that's how that works. So when the signal of the second violin gets sent to the master, it gets processed by this effect and this other effect, and then the same thing, like same slider, panning and stuff, gets applied to the second violins. So it's pretty much like a circuit. You can view it as such. Now the cool thing with this circuit board, which is the mixer, is that you can create interesting parallels and interesting how to say God, I don't remember the English word, but yeah, you can create interesting connections between different mixer tracks, etc. And an interesting hierarchy. That's the word I was looking for. So, for example, by hierarchy, this is what I mean. So, for example, say we have all these strings here. What I did is I created a mixer track for every single string type in the string family. So we have one mixer track for basses, one for cellos, one for violas, and these are, separated contact patches that each go to their corresponding mixer track type. So the bass patches goes to the basses mixer track, etc. And I'm not going to explain how to route contact in this tutorial because it's different for every single DAW. So I suggest you, if you want to learn how to route contact, I suggest you to Google some articles how to route contact in FL Studio or in Cubase or in Logic, because it takes 5 minutes to do it. And yeah, so I routed all the string types to different mixer tracks. The reason why I did this is because I want to, when I mix, I want to process, for example, cellos differently from violas. in some cases, or from differently from first violins, etc. Maybe I want to assign different padding to them, like I did here. So it's useful to split the mixer by instrument type. But say, for example, I want to manage or put an EQ of the same exact shape on every single of these string instrument tracks. Now it will be kind of time consuming to open an EQ on every single one and edit it the same exact way on every single one, because if I wanted to apply if I wanted to edit that EQ, I would have to open all of these the EQ of all these 5 tracks again and apply the editing on all of them. That's time consuming. So one way to solve that is you can create group buses, which are pretty much like tracks where you send multiple signal from multiple mixer tracks, and you pretty much gather all the signal of those multiple mixer tracks into one track alone. So that's what I did here. So say, for example, I want to route the second violins to wait, let me actually do something. I can't find it. Or wait. Nope, can't find it. But yeah, anyway, what I wanted to say is that, say for example, I want to route the second violins not to the master straight away, but I want to route them to group bus for all the strings. So I go here, I select the second violins on FL Studio, and when you select you select a mixer track, you see a green arrow that goes to the other mixer tracks that it's connected to. Right now it's only connected to the mixer, so I go here and I click on this green arrow, which is going to detach the second violins from the mixer track, from the master track. And then I do the same here. I go with the second violin focused, I go here on strings and I click on the white arrow, which is going to connect it. And this knob here determines the volume at which the signal is being sent to this group bus. Now I did the same with all the rest of the string instrument, but if you want to do it, like, you press Ctrl Shift, you select all the multiple channels you want to link to the group bus, then you select the group bus channel you want to use. Click right click on the group bus, track routing. Either you click on route selected to this track or to this track only, and it's going to route those channels to that track. So now when we all the signal that goes through the second violin's track and gets processed, etc., is sent to the strings group. Same thing for all the different strings families and the string mixer tracks. So now if I want to put an EQ on all of these, I just have to put it here on the strings group bus, and it's going to alter all the signal that is going through this mixer track, so all the signal from all the strings. So that's very convenient, because when you have to mix music, like if you have these workarounds, it's going to save you a lot of time. It's going to be much easier to keep track of how you're EQing all the stuff, etc. When I mix, I tend to I do all these groups. So I have a group for brass, one for cry, one for keys, one for hybrid percussion, organic percussion, etc. And I start mixing by going top down. So I use the groups first. I mix the strings all together. I put the EQ on the strings, compression on the strings, etc. And then if I want to really go down in depth, and for example, maybe I just want to take away a little bit of certain frequencies from the first violin because there are strange overlap, then I can go here and go micro on the single first violin channel, go on the EQ and just draw my adjustment curve in the EQ and alter only the first violins. But in general, I just go macro and I mix the groups. So after that is done, these groups are not in my template. They're not sent directly to the master. What I do is I have other group channels for the group channels. I know, group channels inception. Sorry, group tracks, not channels. It's pretty much like Inception, yeah. So we have the strings family, which goes to the strings group, and the strings group goes to the orchestra buses. I have two buses. one for the dry signal and one for the wet signal. The reason why is mentioned in my reverb tutorial, and I think I'm going to make another reverb tutorial, but if you do not know why I'm using dry and wet channels, go check out the reverb tutorial. But to explain it shortly, so the string gets, like, the string track goes to these two, and the cool thing about the mixer is that you can send the same track to two different group buses at the same time, you know. So that's what I did here, and the strings get sent to both. Now the reason why is that I use the dry, like the dry channel and the wet channel have two different purposes. So the dry channel has a dry signal, that's clear. The wet channel is where I generally put the reverb. Now in this track I did something different, and I just sent all the wet channels because I also have dry and wet channels for percussion and for effects. And I sent all the wet channels to one single reverb bus. So I know it sounds confusing, but bear with me. What this means is that, for example, here we have the strings, and I isolated the dry channel. So what you're going to hear is only the dry signal. So strings, like the single strings, go here, and this goes to the dry channel, and the dry channel of the orchestra, and the orchestral dry channel is sent to the dry signal of the whole track. Now I have the same thing going on for the wet channel. So if I were to isolate and only play the wet channel, you would hear only the reverb from the strings. Because again, the strings go here, then they are sent to the orchestra wet channel, which is then sent to the wet signal of the whole track, where the 100% wet reverb unit is placed. Why am I doing this? So the reason why I'm doing this is, yeah, maybe it's my megalomania here, but I also do this because I want to be in control over everything, you know. So I have the whole orchestra section. So for example, we have this part here. Yeah, it's not playing. Or actually, let's play the whole thing. So we have the orchestra, percussion, etc. playing together. But say, like, we have many different groups of the orchestra, and say I just want the orchestra to sound a little bit less reverbed. If I had a single reverb unit on every single orchestra group, that would be a massive loss of time. But in here I can just take the orchestra wet group and just, and it's going to make the orchestra sound less reverb, because less of the signal of the orchestra is being fed to the wet channel, wet signal track, which has the reverb in it, and it leaves the percussion and the rest unaffected by this change, because like they are sent to the same reverb but with different intensities or different volumes. So that's an example of why. Another reason why is volume. For example, say for example I want to lower all the percussion, or maybe something more extreme. I want to put I don't know, a compressor on all the percussion. What I would have to do is put if I didn't have this percussion dry and wet channels, I would have to go here on every single percussion family group and put a compressor on them and with the same parameters. Instead, since I have this percussion dry and percussion wet, which groups the signal for the percussion, I just go here and yeah, just open my compressor, and it's going to affect all the dry signal from the percussion. I'm going to copy that on the wet channel, and that's it. So that's why, you know, why I used all these groups, to make sure that I can edit all of the orchestra sounds at the same time. It's going to save on me a lot of time. It's going to make mixing much less daunting and much more simple. Then it also gives you the freedom to go in depth, because you also have all the different individual tracks for every single instrument type in the way I organize the mixer. So yeah, that's the main thinking behind my mixer. And again, like having a dry signal, overall wet signal, gives me the freedom to even reduce the overall reverb in the track. So that's very comfortable. Now, now that we have like, that's how my mixer is organized generally. And now that we got that out, I want to talk about volume balancing a little bit. Volume balancing is it's very important, because say for example if you have this part here, and say for example like this sounds pretty much okay and balanced, because like the volumes are pretty much taken care of, etc., in the arrangement stage. But let's say for example I want the choir to go way higher when this part comes. So if we analyze the choir, we're going to see it's pretty much like pretty layered. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 5 choir layers. If we were to increase the volume of every single layer manually, it would be hell. And also we cannot like I just want to use an automation because I just want to increase it for this bit. Now if we didn't have the groups, it would be hell, but since we have the group, we can use something like the stereo enhancer here, which I use on every single instrument group here on the mixer, and create an automation, which I did here, and just go in that part, which is around here I guess, and increase the volume, from the stereo enhancer. And the stereo enhancer affects the signal even before it gets affected by this slider. So this gives me the freedom to create automations without linking them to the slider. So for example, I create this automation and now it's going to increase the volume when that part comes. Which is exactly what we wanted, and it did so for all the choir layers. But it did so without even touching this slider. And this is really useful, because the way I use this slider is I leave them constantly at the same levels, I just use this for volume balancing. So when it's all said and done, when we have all the automations, etc., I can still use this to balance the overall volume of the choir. So say for example in the track, I decide that I want to lower the volume of the whole choir by a couple decibels. I can just go here, since this slider is free of all automations, etc. I just go here and I lower it here, and it's going to stay to that level, despite all the automations we drew before. So that's why I use a stereo enhancer other than the slider. And the thing about stereo enhancer automations like that is that now this track is not completely mixed. It's not even finished. I mix my tracks when I'm done with the arrangement. But in my completely mixed tracks, this stereo enhancer automation will be kind of moving all the time, because your track, if you want your track to sound more interesting, a cool thing to do is to give the spotlight or importance to different instruments in different sections. So say for example here I might want the strings to sound more loud than the rest. So I go here and I just boost them a little bit, and then by the time the section is over, maybe I just want the choir to be louder, so I go here and do the same. So the cool thing about this is that you can create subtle changes, but that subtle changes that make it way easier to make some instruments come out more powerfully in some parts of the track, and make them tone a little bit down in other parts. And that alone is a huge mixing technique. You will not believe me, but like there's a friend of mine who makes, like, he's one of the most amazing composers I know, but he's not much savvy about production and mixing, so he doesn't use compressors and that stuff, He just uses volume balancing. It does these kind of automations all over the place, and his tracks sound fucking amazing, They sound very dynamic and moving, etc., because in the end mixing is just volume balancing. if you think about it. You're gonna see, like, if you don't if you don't believe me now, by the end of this tutorial series on mixing, you're probably going to believe me, because in the end, it's all volume balancing. Even compression or equalization. Equalization is pretty much volume balancing, or volume managing on specific ranges of frequencies. Compression is just automatic volume balancing. In the end, it's all about decibels and making sure that instruments don't take too much space from each other, So a cool way to get into mixing is to understand volume balancing first. So what I suggest you to do, if your mixes sound like crap, it's probably because you're using and tweaking stuff that you do not understand how it works, like compressors, stereo imagers. What I suggest you to do is to forget about all of that for now, and to just refrain to using groups, like I did here. Group your instruments, mix the groups, use dry and wet channels, like this. Maybe do not do the orchestra dry, orchestra wet, etc., but just have a two channels where you send the signal, so you can put a 100% dry, 100% wet reverb on one, and 100% dry, have a 100% dry channel, and try to mix by managing the volumes manually with automations. And another cool thing you can do after you're done with your arrangement and you want to enter the mixing stage is, another cool thing you can do is to just reset all the volume sliders in your mixer, and go through your track and pretty much increase the volumes bit by bit, trying to find a nice balance between all the different instruments, one by one. That is going to help you immensely, because by the time you're done with an arrangement, you tend to your ear tends to judge it in a biased way. You start to not notice some things. But if you reset the volume that way, it forces you to remember about every single sound and hear every single sound indistinctively from each other. So that's a cool thing to do also, to make sure that your arrangement and mix are pretty much well balanced. So that's it for the general mixing workflow with orchestral music. And this was just a broad overview. But in the next tutorials, we're going to go in depth about every single mixing unit. But I hope this was a help to you, and I hope it wasn't too much confusing. But if it was, you can always leave me questions in the comments. And yeah, I think I wanted to release this tutorial Sunday, like last Sunday, but I didn't make it in time. So I had thought of making it in Monday, but I didn't make it in time. So I'm making it right now on Tuesday, 9 p.m. In Italian, time zone. But yeah, I think I will. Oh shit! I forgot to mention something. Sorry. This is so random, but one thing I forgot to mention is that when you're panning instruments in your mixer, one thing I suggest you to do is to go on Google, type orchestral setting. You're going to find like images like this, which are nice guides to follow to understand how to pan your orchestral section. Now, most modern libraries come pre-panned, but a bit of more panning never hurts. So I suggest you to follow these and to understand how to pan your instruments. And that's what I did here. So yeah, what I was about to say is that I was thinking of releasing tutorials on a weekly schedule every Sunday or Monday. I think I'm gonna stick to those 2 days, and yeah, that's it. And I think the next tutorials are still going to be about mixing. So if you want to learn more about the subject, stay tuned for more tutorials. And that's it for today, I guess. Alex out.